Denzel said to me a few minutes ago, he said, at your highest moment, be careful, that's when the devil comes for you.
Legal steps, and nothing never happened. Because you know why? I responded to him. And I sent something to the bar letting them know that he told the lie. All right, so let's get off of that. Let's go.
There's a moment in every celebrity dynasty where the cracks start to show. Not in the tabloids, not in the court filings, but in the faces of the people who were supposed to benefit the most from the empire. And right now, that moment is playing out in the most famous family in Hollywood, where the golden son isn't just walking away from his father. He might be the one holding the match. We're talking about Jaden Smith, the 25-year-old who grew up in a mansion where the rules of normal life never applied, where fame wasn't just a lifestyle but a religion, and where the man who raised him, Will Smith, is now the subject of lawsuits, whispers, and allegations so dark they make the Oscar slap look like a minor footnote. And here's the part that should send a chill down your spine. Jaden hasn't spoken to his father in months. Not a call, not a text, not even a staged Instagram reunion. Instead, insiders are saying he's been in quiet conversations with journalists, the kind of conversations that don't happen unless someone's ready to confirm what the world is already suspecting.
Right? So that's one thing we're getting out is because as we about to go into that, I have a civil restraining order of violence filed against Jada Pinkett Smith. We're actively going through that right now. I'm going to share some of the court records.
So no one from her team or her can talk about you on social media on or off or contact you?
Yes.
And let's rewind to that clip from Thailand in 2013, the one that resurfaced like a bad dream once the grooming allegations started flying. Will Smith, the man who built his career on being America's dad, grabs his 14-year-old son by the head and plants a kiss on his lips on live television. Jaden doesn't just look uncomfortable. He jerks back, his entire body language screaming, "Get me out of here," while Will laughs it off like it's all just a big, fun family moment. Back then, we wrote it off as cultural differences, as Will being Will, the guy who hugs strangers and cries at award shows. But now it looks like something else entirely. It looks like a man who doesn't understand boundaries, who treats his own son like a prop in the Will Smith show, where every moment is performative, every interaction calculated, and every no just another chance to push harder. And Jaden? He's the one who tried to legally emancipate himself at 15. Not because he was rebellious, because by his own admission years later, he was trying to escape. In his own words, all the weird stuff we ever saw him do, the skirts, the Twilight language, the philosophical ramblings that made no sense, was him thinking he was normal. Let that sink in. A kid so warped by his upbringing that he didn't even recognize what normal behavior looked like. That's not a phase. That's a cry for help.
A violinist is suing Will Smith, claiming retaliation after he alleges that he was fired for reporting harassment while on tour with Smith. Brian King Joseph filed the lawsuit in California earlier this week, accusing Smith of deliberately grooming him for exploitation.
And now, the help might be coming from the most unexpected place, the very people Will Smith spent decades charming, controlling, and allegedly exploiting. Because Jaden isn't just the son who got away. He's the missing piece in a pattern that's been emerging for years. You've got Brycer Gray, the Empire star who left Hollywood screaming, according to insiders, after what he saw in the Smiths' inner circle. You've got Meek Mill, who allegedly cut ties so abruptly that people still whisper about what he walked in on. You've got the violinist, Brian King Joseph, who's suing Will for retaliation after reporting that his hotel room was invaded, his key conveniently disappearing for hours, only to return to a scene straight out of a horror movie. A handwritten note signed Stone F HIV medication that wasn't his, and a beer bottle left like a calling card. And then there's Bilal, Will's former best friend, the man who claims he walked in on Will and Dwayne Martin in a dressing room, describing it in terms so graphic that even the most jaded gossip sites had to blur the details. These aren't just random accusations, they're a trail of breadcrumbs leading straight to Jaden's doorstep, because if there's one person who can confirm what really happened behind those closed doors, it's the son who grew up inside them.
Will was bent over on the couch and Dwayne was standing up. Like murder. There was murder in there.
The silence between them right now isn't just a family feud, it's the sound of a man who knows his own child might be the one to destroy him. Think about it. Will Smith has spent his entire career crafting an image so squeaky clean it bordered on mythical. The guy who never cursed, who never cheated, who never let the fame go to his head. But the cracks started showing long before the lawsuits. There was the Scientology school he and Jada opened in 2008, the one that was basically a front for the Church of Scientology, where kids of Hollywood elites were taught using L. Ron Hubbard's study technology, and teachers were required to train at the Celebrity Center. Parents pulled their kids out in horror once they realized what was really going on. But Will? He doubled down, pouring millions into a place that former staffers later called a cult adjacency. Then there was the way he and Jada turned their marriage into a brand, selling us this story about healing and growth, while their actual lives were a mess of separations, entanglements, and allegations so wild they made the August Alsina scandal look tame. Remember when Jada sat down on Red Table Talk and dropped the bomb about her affair with Alsina, framing it as some kind of spiritual journey, while Will sat there nodding like a man who'd long since stopped caring what the world thought? That wasn't transparency. That was damage control. And the damage, it was already done.
My feelings for him are just sadness. Like, I feel sorry for somebody who was a young man in a industry who I believe was completely violated and used by people without, his permission, and he had to just go with it because these were powerful men, and in doing so he was promised more acting gigs, more career gigs, and none of that ever came. He was angry, upset, and it went down a very problematic route of substances, aggression, being charged, being arrested for bad things that he was.
Because here's the thing about Jaden. He didn't just grow up in Hollywood. He grew up in a system where young men like Brycer Gray allegedly left the Smiths' mentorship screaming, where Meek Mill reportedly had to distance himself after seeing things he couldn't unsee, where even the people who were supposed to be protected, like the violinist on Will's tour, ended up traumatized, fired, and suing for retaliation. And Jaden? He was at the center of it all. The forced kisses, the emancipation attempt, the public breakdowns where he sounded less like a fearless artist and more like a kid who'd been conditioned to perform weirdness as a survival tactic. His recent social media posts aren't the ramblings of a free spirit. They're the confessions of someone who spent his entire life trying to fit into a family that never really let him be himself. And now, with the lawsuits piling up and the whispers getting louder, he's the one person who can confirm whether the rumors are true. That Will Smith wasn't just a flawed father, but a man who allegedly used his power to control, manipulate, and, according to some, even exploit the people closest to him.
And now, Bilal has filed a $3 million lawsuit against Jada, claiming that she basically threatened, it comes across like a threat,
The stakes here aren't just about Will's career, they're about the entire Smith legacy. Because if Jaden talks, it's not just one man's reputation on the line. It's the carefully constructed myth of the Smith family as Hollywood royalty. The Red Table Talk brand of healing? Gone. The image of Will as the ultimate family man? Shattered. The idea that Jada and Will were ever anything but performers in their own tragedy? Exposed. And the wildest part? The signs were always there. We just didn't want to see them. Like the way Will would joke about Jaden never leaving him, even as his son was begging a court to let him go. Or the way he'd force those kisses on camera, laughing like it was all just a bit, while Jaden's face told a different story. Or the way the family's public persona was always so staged, so rehearsed, that it started to feel less like reality and more like a hostage situation where everyone was playing their part to keep the peace.
That Bilal says that Jada went up to him at a party back in November 2021 and said, if you keep talking about Will and about me, you're gonna catch a bullet. You're gonna catch it.
And now the peace is over. Because Jaden isn't the only one who knows the truth. Bilal's lawsuit is still looming, the violinist's case is gaining traction, and every day, another former associate seems to step forward with a story that makes the last one look tame. The question isn't whether Will Smith will survive this, it's whether Hollywood will let him. Because right now, the king is on the throne, the crown is slipping, and the prince. He's the one holding the knife. And if the past few months have taught us anything, it's that when the Smiths start talking, the world listens. So let's see what happens when the son finally decides to speak. Because one thing's for sure, when he does, it won't just be Will's empire that comes crashing down, it'll be the last shred of the fairy tale we all bought into for far too long.
This is going to be groundbreaking what I'm doing, right? Because we're showing how people blackmail people, how people try to attempt to murder people, right? How people try to silence people, how people go to other companies to try to shut you down, fight.
And here's the thing. When you start connecting the dots, when you look at the way Jaden's been acting, the way Brycer Gray left the industry, the way the violinist described being groomed before his room was invaded, it all starts to paint a picture that's a lot darker than anyone wanted to admit. Because this isn't just about one man's alleged misdeeds. It's about a system that protected him for decades, a family that enabled him, and a son who might finally be ready to burn it all down. And if there's one lesson we've learned from watching empires fall, it's that the truth always comes out. Especially when the people who were supposed to stay silent start finding their voices. So let's see what Jaden has to say. Because if the past is any indication, when he finally speaks, the world won't just be shocked. It'll be changed. And Will Smith? He might finally have to face the one thing he spent his whole life running from, himself.
Jada was the woman that everybody wanted. And Will needed that validation to have that type.
Bilal. That name alone should send a shiver down your spine if you've been following this saga, because he's not just some disgruntled ex-friend suing Jada for $3 million over emotional distress. Oh no, this goes so much deeper. Sources close to the situation are whispering that Bilal hasn't just been lawyering up on his own. He's been in direct contact with Jaden's team. And if you think that's just about comparing notes, think again. This isn't a lawsuit. It's a coordination. The kind of back-channel alliance that only forms when the people involved have one goal: taking down a giant. And in this case, the giant is Will Smith, the man who built an empire on charm, who sold the world a story about family and love, while allegedly running something far darker behind the scenes. The same man who, just a few years ago, was still posting gushing tributes to Jaden on social media, calling him his mini-me, his heart outside my body. But let's rewind to those posts now, knowing what we know. The forced kisses on camera, the way Jaden's face would freeze, his body language screaming, "Get me out of here," while Will beamed for the cameras like everything was perfect. The emancipation filing at 15, which wasn't teenage rebellion. It was a desperate escape attempt. And now we're hearing that Jaden isn't just staying silent. He's actively engaging with the one man who claims to have seen Will Smith at his most vulnerable. Or should we say, his most compromised.
What do you say about the allegations? There's like so many rumors. Anything you want to say? We suing.
You want to talk about betrayal? This isn't just father-son tension, this is a full-blown reckoning. Because Will didn't just lose his son. He created the conditions for his son to destroy him. Think about the pattern here. Bresher Gray, the Empire star who left Hollywood in shambles, who's now allegedly preparing his own legal offensive against Will and Diddy, talking about freak-off sessions and being forced into situations no young man should ever endure. Meek Mill, who vanished from the Smiths' inner circle so abruptly that people still speculate about what he walked in on. And now Jaden, the golden boy turned reluctant whistleblower, the one person who could confirm every dark rumor swirling around his father. The skirts, the erratic behavior, the philosophical ramblings that weren't artistic expression but cries for help. All of it starts to make sense when you realize he wasn't just a victim of the system. According to those close to the situation, he was forced to participate in it. And if that's true, then every public moment we've seen, the awkward interviews, the staged family reconciliations, the way Will would grab him and kiss him on the lips like it was normal, wasn't just creepy. It was evidence.
So according to the complaint, this all happened in March of last year while the violinist was on tour with Will Smith for Smith's global tour for his latest album based on a true story. And according to the complaint, there was this intrusion at his Las Vegas hotel room. He came back to his hotel, he says, and found that there was no forced entry, but that someone had entered the room and left a number of items.
Now let's talk about the journalist connection, because this is where things get really interesting. Bilal's timeline matches up with Jaden's in ways that can't be coincidence. The violinist's lawsuit, with its chilling details about the hotel room invasion. The handwritten note signed Stone F, the HIV medication left like a calling card, the way Will's team turned on the victim the second he spoke up. All of it lines up with the stories we're hearing about Jaden's own experiences. And here's the kicker. Bilal isn't just suing Jada for threats and emotional distress. He's gathering evidence. The kind of evidence that doesn't just support his own claims, but could corroborate what Jaden has allegedly been telling people in private. This isn't just about money, it's about leverage. And if Jaden confirms what Bilal says he saw in that dressing room, Will Smith bent over a couch, Dwayne Martin standing behind him, the scene so graphic that Bilal described it as chaos, then we're not just talking about lawsuits anymore, we're talking about criminal charges. We're talking about a man who spent decades as Hollywood's golden boy, facing the kind of scandal that doesn't just end careers, it ends legacies.
Big news here, the Academy Board of Governors banning Will Smith from all Academy events for 10 years, a decade.
And speaking of legacies, let's talk about the Smith Empire's collapse, because it's happening in real time, and it's messy. Will's attempted comeback this year wasn't just a flop, it was a humiliation. The album, based on a true story, dropped with all the fanfare of a man desperate to remind the world he still mattered. But the public wasn't having it. The lead single, Pretty Girls, got a 60% dislike ratio on YouTube. Critics called it a midlife crisis set to music. The whole project disappeared faster than a bad tweet, and Will was left looking like a man who didn't just lose his touch, he lost his audience. And then came the collaborations, the desperate attempts to stay relevant. The song with KSI, which felt less like an artistic partnership and more like a hostage situation where Will was begging for clout. The performance at King's Cross Station in London, where he busked his old hits to a crowd that looked like they'd rather be anywhere else. The rumors that his team was pouring money into social media algorithms just to force his content into people's feeds. This wasn't a comeback, it was a plea. And the world answered with silence. But the real storm isn't coming from the music, it's coming from the courts. The violinist's lawsuit is just the beginning. Bilal's $3 million claim against Jada isn't just about emotional distress, it's about exposure. And then there's the rumor that just won't fade. The tape. The one allegedly featuring Diddy and another A-list male, the one that insiders say is being shopped around to the highest bidder. The one where, if the whispers are true, the only man who fits the description, bigger than Diddy, black a household name, is Will Smith. Now, we don't know if that tape exists, but we do know that Diddy's world is crumbling around him, with multiple women coming forward with allegations of assault, trafficking, and abuse. And if Will's name gets pulled into that vortex, if Jaden or Bilal or any of the other voices starting to speak up can tie him to those freak-off sessions Bryshire Gray described, then we're not just talking about a fallen star. We're talking about a man facing the kind of legal jeopardy that could land him behind bars. And let's not forget the business side of this, because the Smiths didn't just build a family brand, they built a machine. Westbrook Incorporated, their media company, has been hemorrhaging talent and facing lawsuits for years. Former employees describe a toxic culture where Jada and Will's egos drove every decision, and dissent wasn't just discouraged, it was punished. There was the female producer who settled a claim after alleging she was marginalized by what she called a male entourage. There were the Glassdoor reviews that read like horror stories, talking about evil management in an environment where fear was the only motivator. And then there's the way the company's output has slowed to a crawl, with projects getting shelved and partners jumping ship. This isn't just a PR crisis, it's a financial one. And when you combine that with the legal storms brewing, the pattern starts to emerge. Will Smith didn't just fall from grace. He was pushed. And the hands that pushed him, they might just belong to the people he trusted most.
Prior to Jada, him and Jada having a relationship, I felt Will was pretty much almost an angelic person.
So where does that leave us? With a man who spent his life controlling the narrative, now watching it slip through his fingers. A father who thought his son would always be his heir, now realizing that same son might be his downfall. And an industry that's finally starting to ask the questions it should have asked years ago. What did Will Smith really do behind closed doors? How many people stayed silent because they were scared, or paid off, or convinced no one would believe them? And what happens when the people who know the truth decide they're done staying quiet? The king is silent. Long live the witness. And if the past few weeks have taught us anything, it's that the witnesses are everywhere. They're in the lawsuits. They're in the leaked texts. They're in the stories that keep surfacing, no matter how hard Will's team tries to bury them. And soon, they might be in a courtroom, under oath, with the whole world watching. So here's the question we're all asking now. When Jaden finally speaks, and make no mistake, he will, what's the one thing he'll say that changes everything? What's the detail so damning that even Will's most loyal fans won't be able to look away? And when that moment comes, will we finally see the man behind the myth? Or will we realize that the myth was the lie all along? Stay sharp, stay curious, and keep your eyes open, because this story is far from over. And trust us, you won't want to miss what happens next. Until then, keep wondering, because in Hollywood, the truth is always stranger and darker than fiction.